Welcome to AvPlan EFB webinar, part 3, flight planning. In this webinar, we're going to take a look at flight planning, some basic flight planning to start off with. So let's get started. When you open AvPlan, as we've discussed in previous webinars, you'll see your stored plans here. So to overwrite a stored plan, simply tap on it, open it, and go down to the Edit button. Scroll down to the bottom and clear your times and your tracks and your fixes if you like too. For the purposes of today's demonstration though, we're going to start with a new flight plan. So let's go back to stored flight plans now and begin. To start a new flight plan, simply tap New Flight Plan in the corner and let's walk through the navlog. On the top of the navlog is UTC, and that will always stay on the top of the navlog, so you don't have to do any complicated mathematical deductions. We will default to the aircraft that you used last, and if you want to change your aircraft, just pop down here to the aircraft icon in the middle at the bottom of the navlog, tap on it, and there are two methods here. To change your aircraft, simply tap on the aircraft, or to alter the aircraft, tap on the eye, and you can fill in along the box various alterations you might like to make, including setting up defaults. You can put in a default POB if you perhaps only fly by yourself, default taxi fuel, which I do as I fly in Bankstown and I'm quite far away from the runway, so on and so forth there. Here's where you change your ICAO flight plan information, and here is where you change anything specific to the aircraft itself. Once you get your change, it will ask you if you want to save, press save and go back. For the purposes of today's demonstration, we're going to use Foxtrot Echo Romeo, which is a Generation 3 Cirrus. All right, let's take a little look around the navlog here. Well, when you customize your aircraft, depending on the aircraft type, so let's take a little look at Foxtrot Echo Romeo. When you tap on it there, it will give you, I've only set it up here for 65% power lean of peak, but depending on how you customize the aircraft over in aircraft settings, you'll have different options here, once again, pertaining to the type of aircraft that you're flying. I have that twice for some reason, which means somewhere I've made an error, which I'll go and clean up later. Oh, or in fact, I'll clean up now by simply deleting. To delete anything on AvPlan, simply slide your finger along the line from right to left to bring up the delete button there, and to select 65% power, simply tap on it and you can see that reflected here. So as I said, depending on the aircraft type that you have, your power settings will be in the drop down there. Now in AvPlan, we have several different ways that we can begin to create a flight plan, and we're going to take a look at those in a minute. The first one being here and the second one being here. If you're in VFR mode, the route button there will still provide you with some routes, but first of all you have to put in your waypoints, and if you're in IFR mode, you'll find it useful to perhaps use some of the IFR routes that are suggested to you. We'll take a look at that again when we've built our flight plan. Be sure to be in plan mode, as plan mode enables us to build a plan, and fly mode switches the AvPlan app over into GPS mode. We'll take a look at fly mode later. Your summary will be here, your aircraft type, and etc. And this, of course, will change as we build our flight plan. And we can name our flight plan here. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's call it Go Fly Demo. When you name your flight plan, you'll find it easier to identify over in stored flight plans. So it's always a good idea to go ahead and do that. So let's look at the ways now that we can create a flight plan. The first way is by pressing the plus button, and this is really useful if you don't know the ident of the airport that you're either at or going to. So I'm going to start at Bankstown because that's where I fly from, but if I didn't know the ident of Bankstown, I could simply start typing Bankstown and it would bring me all the suggestions there. And here's Bankstown Aerodrome and there's Bankstown NDB. And so we can tap on the plus right here to add that to our navlog. Now you can see Bankstown's here and the METAR that we talked about in a previous webinar there. And for those of you who haven't seen the previous webinar, that denotes the weather. Green being VFR, meaning all's well today in Bankstown. Now, if you do know the ident, you can simply type it in this green box. Anything in AvPlan that's green is customizable. So go ahead and type in the box here the places that you know, and just press enter. And once we do that, of course, we draw the flight plan route between Bankstown and Camden. And a third way you can add a point to your navlog is by simply tapping on the map. So let's say, for instance, we'd like to go to Shell Harbour. We simply tap on Shell Harbour, and anytime you tap once on the map, you will get the nearest items box up. And you can use this nearest items box to search for very specific areas such as airports, nav aids, waypoints. So let's flick onto airports now and just search by airports as we want to land at an airport. That airport is Shell Harbour. So let's press the plus and add it to our navlog there. As I said to you in a previous demonstration, everything that happens here is reflected here, and everything that happens here is reflected here, and we can see that in action now. What we can also see in action here are these extended runway centre lines that we were talking about in a previous webinar. These are 5 nautical mile runway centre lines with the direction of the runway at the end and the interwind runway in green. Now we do take this interwind runway information from the ATIS or AWIS, so to make sure that it's absolutely current, do go ahead and refresh your weather here. And that will just push for a new update there. Bear in mind also that the interwind runway might not necessarily be the runway you want to use. In some cases, it's a grass or gravel runway. So do bear in mind it is just a suggestion. All right. And a final way that you can add a point to your flight plan or navlog is by rubber banding. So simply pick up the line, the flight track, and drag it with your finger to your desired airport or waypoint and drop it there. And as you can see, it'll suggest the nearest items box will come up again and it'll suggest the nearest airport there. We want Mittagong, so if we press plus, that pops Mittagong into our navlog as well. So what I do when I flight plan is I put where I am and where I want to be and simply rubber band through. If we're planning an IFR flight, we could tap route here, and that would give us a choice to fly direct, to fly the shortest route, or you can tap to file recently filed routes. Let's have a look and see if anybody has. Yep. So there's a bunch of recently filed routes there, and to add those to your navlog, you simply press the plus there. For the purposes of this demonstration today, I'm going to remain in VFR planning. Later on down the line, we will be doing an advanced planning webinar where we'll be looking at some IFR features. If you accidentally add an airport to your navlog, or if you change your mind, you can remove that airport in one of several ways. The first and easiest way is to simply tap on the airport itself, and this will bring up the airport box. This is a really handy box that we brought in later on in the development of AvPlan, because over the years, we've discovered that particularly for helicopter pilots and pilots in confined cockpits, people don't want to change panes. They want all their information as much as they can on the one pane. And so to aid situational awareness, we've allowed you now to access almost all the information you need on the en route pane. So by tapping on an airport, you will bring up this box, which is loaded with information. So you can add or delete using this box. You can also open the terminal page if you want to know more about the airport. But if you don't want to leave the page, pretty much everything you need is right here in this box. So in the case of Mittagong, I haven't chosen a particularly good airport here because Mittagong's an ALA, so it won't be nearly as much information as say. So let's do that again by taking a look at Shell Harbour instead, as it has more information. So here we are, we've got our METAR, and if you tap on the METAR here, you'll get your plain English METAR underneath, which once again is really useful if you're flying with a non-pilot passenger and you simply want them to read out the weather. They can read this out and it doesn't come across as absolute nonsense to them. Ditto your TAF. If you tap on your TAF, your plain English TAF is underneath. Also your NOTAMs here, and you can mark those off as red as you go down. Then your weather cam. If you want access to your weather cam, let's take a look at what it's like in Shell Harbour today. That's the westerly aspect, and you can toggle between those there. Of course, each airport will have a number of cameras or one camera that swivels, and then go back to details there. Scrolling down, you've got your comms and you've got your charts. So whilst the aerodrome charts are embedded underneath all the aerodromes, and I'll show you that in a minute, you can also access your aerodrome charts here in two ways. By tapping on aerodrome chart, it will open the aerodrome chart in the terminal page, and by tapping on the georeference symbol here, it will open the aerodrome chart on the top of the map. Ditto here with our approaches. Say, for instance, we want to look at the RNAV Zulu 4 runway 16. We tap on the georeference symbol and that will pop the chart on the map here, as you can see. To dial that down, you can use the opacity slide here, and to bring it back up again, or you can clear it off entirely by pressing clear. And as I mentioned before, all aerodrome diagrams are embedded underneath the airport. So if you pinch in far enough under each airport in your plan, you'll see the aerodrome diagram there. Now, the overlay is a premium feature, but everybody gets the aerodrome chart embedded underneath, regardless of their subscription structure. And to make that go away, once more, simply clear here. Okay, now let's remove Mittagong from our plan by pressing the delete button. We can also come down here and press the edit button. And the edit button allows us to also pick up sections of the navlog and move them with our finger, delete them entirely. Also, we can reverse, invert, and append our plan. So to reverse it, press reverse, and that will take us Bankstown, Camden, Shell, Camden, Bankstown. And to invert, I'll just delete those so I can show you invert. Invert will flip it on its head by putting Shell at the top and Bankstown at the bottom. You can invert it back. And append will allow us to add it to another flight plan. By tapping append, you will open your stored plans, and you can attach that to an existing plan. Also, when you tap the edit button, you're given more functions to edit in the navlog itself. So as the navlog is quite small, we don't give you a huge array of things you can edit all at once because the boxes are the size of our fingers. But in edit mode, it becomes more sensitive so that you can change your TAS and you can change your wind. And tap on edit again there. As you can see, we're now building information about our plans. And in this case, we're going to do a stage 1 plan. In a future webinar, we're going to do a multi-stage plan. And I'm going to show you how that works. But just for this webinar, we're going to keep it very, very simple. So as you see, our navlog information is built up down here, including our cost, our fuel burn, and our EET, and our distance is given to you in a summary there. So once you've built your flight plan, the next thing you do is you go down to the planning pane here where we've given you a checklist to help you work through all the things that you need to do before you go flying. So let's take a look at that. I've already created a new flight plan. We can import a previously filed flight plan here if we choose. And now let's take a look at our optimized altitude calculator. So this calculator has taken information from the aircraft that we have entered and our flight plan on our navlog here to deduce how long it's going to take us at certain altitudes. We're in VFR, so we're on the 500s. If we were in IFR, we'd be on all zeros. Hemispherically correct is in the green, and it gives us our time, our fuel, and our fuel costs there. The fuel costs you can add over here when you change and amend your profile for your aircraft. To add an altitude to your plan, simply tap on it and it will populate the fields over here. Or should you like to make an amendment, for instance, Camden here is under the control space, Class C control space, so you need to pop it down to 2500 if you don't have a clearance. So let's do that. And now you see that's also changed Shell Harbour. If you want to only change one pane rather than all of them, you can pop it into fly mode. And that will just allow you to change one section and not all of them. We assume you want to fly at the same altitude. Most people do, but if you don't, just pop it over into fly mode, then switch back to plan. That will allow you to change each individual pane there. So once we've optimized our altitude and we've put in our ETD, so here's our UTC up here. Let's say we want to go in an hour. We don't have to put in the 6-figure group unless we're going tomorrow or another day. If we're leaving today, we can put in the 4-figure group and AvPlan will assume you're going today and amend it for your 6-figure group. So let's just put in 0405 and press return, and our ETD is in there and it has now done our calculations. So we know that we're going to arrive at Shell Harbour at 0423, only a short flight there in a Cirrus. Lucky me. All right, now let's take a quick look at aircraft loading and fuel calculations, fuel planning. Now we've made this really, really easy, and I think this is one of the outstanding features in AvPlan EFB. Personally, as a pilot, I used to loathe constructing weight and balance with a pencil and a piece of paper, so I'm finding this absolutely delightful. It really is simple, and let me show you how. First of all, you just pop in your passengers, your pilot, your passengers, just by weight, your baggage, and this is set up as a Fiki equipped Cirrus. So I've got de-ice fluid here. I'll show you what happens if I try to put in too much fluid. It'll go red. Anytime you get red in AvPlan, that means you've done something wrong. And so let's go back and correct that with an appropriate amount of de-ice fluid there. And let's put 300 litres of fuel in. And we're done. It's as simple as that. So here is our takeoff weight, our landing weight, and our 0 fuel weight here for our Cirrus. To amend the people on board, simply tap to. And there are 2 ways we can create a passenger manifest. We can tap on the front seat here, tap on the person, tap by the person and write in it. Yes, and if you tap something twice, again, it turns it into a bag. So you don't need to name your bags, of course. And the easiest way to do it, and my favorite way to do it, is to do I'll go back there. Sorry, I went a little fast. To tap on the person aboard here. Tap on the line. It's actually a link that will open your manifest for you. So you can now add Krisha and her post-COVID weight there, and so on and so forth. You can add your rear passenger there. Let's pop Bevan in there. I have no idea what his post-COVID weight is because I haven't seen him since COVID because he's in lockdown in Melbourne, but I'm going to take a stab at 90. Hope I don't get fired. And so on and so forth. You can add your baggage, etc. there, and that's allowed you to create a manifest, and it will let you know that you've got passengers in there. To view that manifest, go back to planning, scroll down to print preview load sheet, tap on the stage, and this is what you'd show CASA should you be ramp checked. So here's me and Bevan and our weights there, but it's also got the date, our name, our aircraft type, our aircraft call sign, and all our fuel calculations down here. So this is, some people like to print this out. You can do so in the print page. You can take a photograph of it and keep it in your camera roll if you like. But that basically is what you'd show CASA to show that you have everything in order. Now, if we go back to weight and balance here, the only other things I want to show you are, you can make a quick change here to your units if you want to. So for instance, this Cirrus, the POH is in pounds and the fuel is in gallons. So you can toggle it over. You can pop it into pounds, add your pounds, and then toggle it back into kilos, and it'll do all the work for you. So that's a handy one if your POH is in pounds, if it comes from America. I think the only country in the world left to use pounds, I think. You can also pop your fuel costs in there. That's ambitious. I obviously did that on a good day. So let's change that over to now to a perhaps more realistic 220. And that pops it in there, helps you with your fuel calculations, which are reflected over here. You can send or share this flight plan by tapping the icon here. That allows you to text it, airdrop it, email it, etc. Now, a couple of things here are green, which means they're customizable. And as you can see, my default taxi that I told you about over there when we were talking about setting up Foxtrot India Romeo, Foxtrot Echo Romeo rather, is reflected here now in my taxi section. You can add approach and you can add fuel. Now, if we create an alternate, and we will look at creating alternates in our webinar tips and tricks, if we create an alternate, that will be here. And if we create a delay, that will be added to our crew. So we'll be looking at delays also in tips and tricks in an upcoming webinar. So once we've done our fuel planning, aircraft loading and weight and balance, we never look at the PRDs for routes if we want to. These are all shown on the map in red, as we discussed in an earlier webinar. But if you want to take a look at any of those, simply press the I, and that will flick you over to the map, show you exactly where that PRD is. And as we talked about before, double tap on the PRD, and that will show you more about it. And tap on it again, it'll highlight it for you and give you even more detail. Anytime you want to know anything about airspace, double tap on the map. Back to planning. Let's take a look at flight status. Now, flight status is a unique AvPlan feature, which will go looking in the background for any changes to your navlog. So once you've created your flight plan, we're now aware that you have a flight plan in. Say perhaps you created your flight plan in the morning, but you're not flying until the afternoon. Flight status will show you any changes that might occur between the time that you started your flight planning and the time you go flying. So if there's a speccy or a TAF or a change amendment to a SIGNET, it'll all be delivered to you here. You'll see a little number 1 and you'll see a little number 1 down here in planning 2. Tap on flight status and we'll hold that for you for about 8 hours, or you can mark it as red up here. User waypoints. This is your user waypoint directory, and we'll be looking at user waypoints in the tips and tricks webinar. You can access your special route briefing here. That's a route briefing just specific to your flight plan. So it won't give you everything in the whole country. It'll just give you, excuse me, what's necessary. It is quite extensive though. You will get all the areas. You will get some GPS RAIN information. You'll get all your NOTAMs here. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll also see you get your graphical area forecast charts down there too. There you go. Sorry, it's quite a scroll. And you can print this in the print section. You just wait for that to scroll all the way down. There you go. There's your graphical area forecast, which you can also access in the weather pane over here. Back to planning. Print load sheet we had a look at. Now let's take a look at submitting a flight plan. You can, of course, just submit a SAR time. In this case, though, we're going to submit a flight plan. And the reason I always submit a flight plan is that I've spoken to so many air traffic controllers over the years who've said, doesn't matter where you go, please submit a flight plan, because if anything happens to you, it makes it so much easier for us to find you. So I'm in the habit, particularly now in AvPlan where it's so easy, it should take you 30 seconds to submit a flight plan if you're all set up properly. So all of this is all pre-filled, everything is pre-filled, but what we've done over the years is we've made this flight plan more interactive. So you can make changes now on this flight plan, and those changes will be reflected right back there in your nav log. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. You can change your flight rules in here, so you don't have to toggle over here. You can also do a mix of VFR and IFR, and we will be looking at that in an advanced webinar. You can change all your types there, number of aircraft if you're flying in a fleet, so on and so forth. Here's all the information pertaining to the Cirrus that we're flying. It knows we're departing from Bankstown, how many people we've got on board, and the ETD, because we've put all that information in either in our nav log or over in the weight and balance page. It's got our route there, our initial altitude, and if we want to change that initial altitude, we can just tap on it there. Perhaps we planned in the morning, we want to have a look and see if there are any differences this afternoon in the weather, and that will change in our optimized altitude calculator. So that just brings the calculator up there. We can also change our endurance. by tapping on endurance, and it'll bring up our fuel tank there. We can put more or less fuel in, and so on and so forth. You can add your remarks and other details and special handling in here. If we had an alternate, and we'll be doing alternates, as I said, in a next webinar, the alternate will be shown here. So all we need to do, if we're all set up properly, is simply add a SAR time. And to do so, just tap on the SAR time line and our SAR time calculator will come up. Now we know we're going to land at Shell Harbour at 0423, so we've made a suggestion of 0523, which makes perfect sense. And if we want to see that in local time, simply tap the corner there. That gives you local time. That's 23 minutes past 3 this afternoon. Sometimes it makes more sense to see it in local time, but it will always default to UTC. And just tap on the line again to add your SAR time here. Now, because I'm using a call sign that's not mine, actually belongs to a colleague of mine, I'm not going to submit a flight plan just in case he's out flying. I don't want to cause any confusion. So I'm going to use the no send button. And this no send button is marvelous for practicing sending flight plans. And I do encourage you, the first time you set up an aircraft and go flying with AvPlan, experiment with the no send button first. And then if there are any errors, we can help you with them. You can look them up on our website under our FAQs. We've got a decode of all the NAICS errors that come through. So that will help you then work out what's wrong. Don't do it while you're sitting in the run-up bay, unless you've already done it before and you're confident. So by submitting no send, submitting via no send, press the submit button still. What it'll do is it still will send it to Air Services, but it won't send your call sign. Instead, it will send the word no send, as you can see here, and then Air Services will know that that's you experimenting or practicing, and they won't pass it on any further. You will get a confirmation from NAICS. You may have just heard that ding. That ding was the email from NAICS sending you a confirmation that you've filed a flight plan, but it's not properly filed. Were it properly filed, it would be marked as filed in green up here. Now you get a page for each stage, and when we talk about multi-level flight plans, multi-stage flight plans, we'll walk through that. If you want to make an amendment to your flight plan, simply overwrite it. Say you want to change your departure time, simply overwrite it and press submit again, and it will come through as an amendment with only the line that you changed amended at the bottom here. Now you can cancel a flight plan in AvPlan, and you can also amend a SAR time. So you have a directory of SAR times here. Click on the SAR time you'd like to amend, and either cancel or put in a new SAR time and just overwrite the one that's in there. You no longer have a call sensor. You can do it all inside the app. There. Cancel your flight plan by deleting the flight plan here. Okay, here are your print send options. You can toggle them all off. You can toggle them all on. I don't actually print anything, so I am not familiar with a lot of this, but I am aware that you can, yes, indeed, print your weather briefings, your charts, your loading chart, etc. there. And to print, tap this icon here, and that will give you some options to email, to print straight off to your Wi-Fi equipped printer, or to send to another app there, which you can also do. And that concludes our third webinar on flight planning. Join me for the next one, and I'll see you then. Thank you very much.